Hi, I'm Billy Stewart, Assistant Pastor here at Solid Rock Tabernacle, 1325 Rudy Road in Alma, Arkansas. On behalf of Senior Pastors Harold Lee and Debbie Gilmore and the entire congregation of Solid Rock Tabernacle, I would like to welcome you to the broadcast and extend this personal invitation to you to come be with us in one of our exciting spirit filled services. Our Sunday school begins at 9 a.m., morning worship is at 10 a.m., and Sunday evening worship is at 6 p.m. We also have an exciting Wednesday evening Bible study at 7 p.m., where we are taking a journey through the Bible, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse. I think you'll enjoy it. Join us, won't you? 1325 Rudy Road in Alma. We're church the way it should be, and we'll save a seat for you. Now, let's join our service already in progress. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Well, let's start with chapter 23, verses 1 to 3. It says, And Balaam said unto Balak, Build me here 7 altars, and prepare me here 7 oxen and 7 rams. And Balak did as Balaam had spoken, and Balak and Balaam offered every altar a bullock and a ram. And Balaam said unto Balak, Stand by thy burnt offering, and I will go. Peradventure the Lord will come to meet me, and whatsoever he showeth me, I will tell thee. And he went to an high place. So there were many altars there to receive, or ready to receive many bulls and many rams throughout all of this. Okay? And King Balak was ready to do whatever Balaam asked. He says, I'll do whatever you need me to do. Okay? I'll do whatever you ask me to do, so long as you will curse Israel. That was his main concern. He says, I don't care what you ask me. If you want me to stand on my head and whistle Dixie, I'll stand on my head and whistle Dixie, as long as you'll curse Israel for it. Okay? So because Balaam sought to turn Yahweh against Israel, these 7 altars and their sacrifices were intended to appease the Lord. When they offered sacrifices, at least in those times, they did so to try to appease the Lord in some way. And that's basically what Balaam was doing here, is he was trying to appease the Lord by offering these sacrifices. But there's a problem with that. God never told Balaam to build an altar to him. God never said, build an altar and make a sacrifice to me, much less 7 altars. Okay? So with 7 sacrifices on 7 different high places, which was probably on a mountaintop of some sort, is what they said of high places, these 7 altars and burnt offerings were Balaam and Balak's idea. It wasn't God's idea. God didn't say, hey, you build these altars and you make sacrifices to me, I'll do what you have to say. No, that's not what happened. They were making the altars and giving the sacrifices. That was their own idea. In the Numbers account, Balaam was a corrupt prophet, right? I think we can all agree that he was a corrupt prophet, but false prophet. He was a corrupt one, but he was not a one. He was greedy. He was ready to receive riches for trying to curse Israel. At the same time, he could not or would not create his own prophecies. You see, he wouldn't do just what Balak wanted. He wouldn't say just what Balak wanted him to say, just because Balak wanted him to say it, because he was going to pay him money. He was corrupt for taking money to be a prophet, yes. But he also said, I'm not going to say something that God didn't say. So he was corrupt, but he was not a false prophet. He could only say, whatever the Lord shows me, I will tell you. Okay? Now, Balak went to the top of a hill to stand beside one of the altars, is where he was. And you can kind of imagine the conversation between Balak and Balaam with all of this. He goes, I want you to get the gods to curse Israel. Some way or another, I want you to get him to curse Israel for me. And Balaam's saying, it doesn't work like that. You see, Yahweh, the God of Israel, is greater than those other gods. So if Israel is going to be cursed, Yahweh has to be the one to do it. He said, and then Balak is kind of like, well, okay, well then let's get the God of Israel to curse them somehow. And Balaam answers him, you know, and this is just hypothetically speaking, Balaam kind of answers him and says, well, we can try to do that, but I can only tell you what the God of Israel tells me to tell you. I can't tell you something that he didn't tell me. All right? So now let's look at verses 4 to 6. And God met Balaam. Now think about that for a second. I say he's a corrupt prophet, but he's not a false prophet. It says, and God met Balaam. And he said unto him, I have prepared 7 altars, and I have offered upon every altar a bullock and a ram. And the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth, and said, return unto Balak, and thus thou shalt speak. And he returned unto him, and lo, he stood by his burnt sacrifice, he and all the princes of Moab. So God spoke to and through someone who was obviously as corrupt as Balaam was. Now, this shows us something. What does this show us? I'm so glad you asked me that. What does this show us? It shows us that spiritual does not equal spiritual maturity or holiness in life. Just because you have a spiritual gift and display a spiritual gift does not necessarily mean that you are spiritually mature or that you are living a holy life. Okay? So God spoke through the donkey previously. Remember the last chapter, that donkey wasn't a spiritual thing, yet God spoke through the donkey. All right? And now it says he put a word in Balaam's mouth. God put the words in Balaam's mouth. Okay? The words were put in his mouth. They do not pass from him, by him, because the words are not his words. Balaam could not pollute the words that were spoken because it wasn't his words that he was speaking. It was God's words. God's put the words in his mouth. And when Balaam returned, Balak and all the princes of Moab were ready. And they were ready to learn what their money had bought from Balaam. Yes? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
He was caught in sin. He was committing adultery on his wife and doing all these things. Yet when he got behind the pulpit,
now when Balaam returns, he goes to Balak, and there with Balak is all the princes of Moab, and now they're anxious because they're no. They forked out quite a bit of money here, building 7 altars and putting 7 rams and 7 bulls, one on each altar. That's a pretty penny that they put out here, right? Plus, they've also already offered Balaam all these riches and everything. So they're going, okay, what did I get for my money? It's just like anything, any of us. We hire somebody to do. When we go in, we want to see what we got for our money. And what we get for our money, we hope, is what was promised to us. Okay? Thing is, Balaam didn't promise anything. Balaam says, I can only tell you what God tells me. Okay? He was basically saying, I ain't making no promises here. I'll try. I'll go talk to him. But I can't make any promises that he's going to do what you want him to do. All right? All right, verses 7 through 10. And he took up his parable and said, Balak, the king of Moab, hath brought me from Aram out of the mountains of the east, saying, Come, curse me, Jacob, and come, defy Israel. How shall I curse whom God hath not cursed? Or how shall I defy whom the Lord hath not defied? For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. Lo, the people shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, and the number of the 4th part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my last end be like his. Now, it says parable on this, and I want to point out that some other translations actually translate this as oracle. Basically, what it means is the parable, the oracle, and the other translations, it basically means prophecy. The Hebrew word there actually means prophecy on this. And that Balaam spoke regarding the people of Israel, come and curse me, come curse me, Jacob, and come defy Israel. This is the beginning of this parable, or this prophecy is the beginning of about 7 prophecies that are going to be spoken. This is the first of them. Another one's we're going to see in verse number 18. 3, 15, 20, 21, and 23, we'll see the other prophecies that come forth on it, okay? But this is what Balak asked for. He wanted a spiritual curse against Israel. He was not asking him to completely, to go up there and curse them and that they all fall over dead. It's not what he was asking for. He was asking him to spiritually curse them. Because that Israel's strength was not in armies, it was in their spiritual walk with God. It was in their spiritualness. So if he could and spiritually curse against Israel, then he knows that they could be defeated in battle. Yet Balaam, or any other prophet for that matter, could not curse Israel. And he could not curse Israel if God had not cursed them. Okay? Balak couldn't bribe God to curse Israel. There was no amount of money that he could give to bribe God into cursing Israel. See, Israel was different from all the other nations, chosen by God for a special role in his unfolding plan of redemption. Israel was different. And Israel was different because God was different. He was God promised to bless Israel. He goes up there asking if he could curse them, and Balak's wanting them cursed, and yet Balaam comes back and he blesses Israel by making them a singular nation of great size. Okay? Now we kind of sense that when Balaam looked down upon Israel and he saw their vast camp, remember there's millions of them by this time, okay? He was amazed at their size, how big they were. Okay? Imagine standing on a mountaintop and looking down and seeing millions of people in a valley below you, camping out in the valley below you. And you're at a vantage point to where you can see all of this. You know, when you're down on the ground looking at them, you only see a little piece of it. And you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. Then when you get up higher up where you can see, you're like, wow, that's a lot. Right? It is kind of reminds me of like the Grand Canyon. I've been to the Grand Canyon. Have anybody been to the Grand Canyon before? I know a few of you have. Yeah. When you go up there and you walk out on that little thing and you see and you go, man, it's vast, it's big, it's huge. But if you ever get in an airplane and fly over that thing, a helicopter, whatever, you're going, man, that little part I saw was nothing. This thing is huge. I remember flying over, going from one place to another. I think I was coming out of California or something, but we were flying. And the pilot says if you're on the left side of the aircraft, if you'll look out the window, you'll see the Grand Canyon. And I thought, okay, yeah, because I was on the left side. I looked out the window. We're 30,000 feet in the air. And you can see all of this down there, and you're like, wow, that's big.
It is just beautiful just to see.
Yeah.
Just the magnificent things that God
That God made. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Did the plane start tilting left?
No, the plane didn't start to. Not everybody was able to run over to the left-hand side, but it was. But it's just, yeah, the plane went. Yeah, it's amazing, and that's kind of what Balaam was saying. He had gone up on this mountain, and he's looking out, and he sees these millions of people out there, and he's like, wow, there's a lot of people there. Eh? He was amazed at their size, and he was amazed at the blessing of their fruitfulness and their prosperity. Now, the dust of Jacob here is a clear reference to the promise that God made to Abraham and his covenant descendants, that they would be basically as the concluded his parable or his prophecy with this longing. He said, to die the death of the righteous. Think about that. Balaam said, I want to die the death of the righteous. Balaam was one of many people who longed to die the death of the righteous. When you look at it, that's what we all strive for, that if we leave this world by way of the grave, we want to die the death of the righteous, right? The problem is, there's a lot of people that want to die the death of the righteous, and Balaam was this way. Desire to live the life of the righteous. Okay? Now, the actual death of Balaam, Numbers 31 and 8, gives us no hope for the fulfillment of this wish. We'll see when he dies, he did not die the death of the righteous. Okay? Now, his wish wasn't wrong. It wasn't wrong for him to wish this, but it also wasn't enough. All right? Those who seek to separate living the life of the righteous and dying the death of the righteous are hoping to break an unbreakable chain. They want to to live the life of the righteous and die the death of the righteous, that's fine. Okay, these are all chained together. But to live the life of the unrighteous and die the death of a righteous, that's asking for the chain to be broken, and it can't be. You can't break that unbreakable chain. Okay? All right, verses 11 and 12. And Balak said unto Balaam, What hast thou done unto me? I took thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast blessed them altogether. And he answered and said, Must I not take heed to speak that which the Lord hath put in my mouth? Okay? Well, Balak, he's understandably upset. Okay? He paid good money to have Israel cursed. All right? And instead, this prophet winds up blessing Israel instead. Okay? Balaam, but he was still a corrupt prophet. All right? We sense that he was kind of disappointed that he couldn't please the king. I mean, he wanted to please his employer, wanted to please the king, primarily because the king had promised him a whole lot of money to do this. But Balaam, I can only speak what the Lord speaks to me. I can only say what the Lord says to me. Okay? And that's kind of the way it is now. You know, I know a lot of people get offended, upset, mad sometimes about what one of us preaches from the pulpit, but we can only say what God tells us to say. You know, if you're upset by something that the Lord tells us to say, maybe it was meant for you. Okay? Maybe it was directed at, now we're not thinking I'm directed at this person. Yeah. There's one thing I learned a long time ago: you never preach your problems from the pulpit. You don't do that. You tell you give what the Lord wants. And if somebody hears something because I've had a lot of people that have come up just bent out of shape at me after preaching and said, hey, I took offense by that. Well, I can't even tell you I'm sorry you took offense by it. It's all I can say is, oh well.
I think what it means is you better keep listening.
Yeah, maybe you need to pay attention to what was said, because if you took offense by it, were you offended or were you convicted? That's the thing you got to look at. Yes.
But you know how you said that he did what a true prophet would do, but he was still a corrupt prophet.
Yeah.
That's just like if, say, like a billionaire decides to donate some money to charity and stuff. It doesn't change. Like they could donate as much money as they want, but that still doesn't.
I say a drug dealer that comes in and says, I want to pay my tithes on my drug money. It's huh?
It's income.
If somebody's corrupt, just because they do good, just because they give the money to the church, doesn't automatically make them a good person. Okay? And we're not going to get into the discussion as to whether or not a church should take that kind of money or anything. I'm not going to get into that. I think we got into that one time, and boy, that was a rabbit trail I don't want to go down again. But yeah, but the point of the matter is, just because that would be like going to and robbing a bank and saying, I robbed the bank to give it to this orphanage so they could stay open. Well, just because you're giving the money to the orphanage doesn't mean that it was okay to rob the bank. All right? It was still wrong to rob the bank. So, you can have the good intentions of it, which Balaam did, but he was still corrupt. All right? Yeah. 2 wrongs don't make it right, but 3 lefts do. Yeah, that's right. All right. Verses 13 to 17. And Balak said unto him, Come, I pray thee, with me unto another place, from which thou mayest see them. Thou shalt see but the utmost part of them, and shalt not see them all, and curse me them from thence. And he brought him into the field of Zophim, to the top of Pisgah, and built 7 altars, and offered a bullock and a ram on every altar. And he said unto Balak, Stand here by the burnt offering while I meet the Lord yonder. And the Lord met Balaam again, and put a word in his mouth again, and said, Go again unto Balak, and say thus. And when he came to him, behold, he stood by his burnt offering, and the princes of Moab with him. And Balak said unto him, What hath the Lord spoken? So, yeah, they made 7 more altars and offered 7 more bulls and 7 more rams on 7 more altars. All right? So far they have offered 14 bulls and 14 rams on 14 separate altars. Balak wanted to change the word Balaam spoke over Israel. We just moved locations. He wanted to change it from a blessing to a curse. So Balak hoped by changing the place where Balaam stood and changing the perspective that he had, then the prophecy would change. If I change what you're seeing, then the prophecy should change. Okay? And he wanted it to change. He thought this because Balaam seemed so impressed by the size of Israel in the first prophecy. He had seen them and said, man, they're huge. So Balak is basically saying, I'll take you and put you in a place where you can only see a portion of Israel for the second prophecy. Okay? Balak wanted so badly for Israel to be cursed. He was wanting so bad that he was willing to build 7 more altars and offer sacrifices for each one of those altars. Basically, he was throwing good money after bad, yes. And it was all for nothing. Yeah. Yeah, he didn't have to worry about Israel in the first place. But, that's kind of like having a $300 car, and a $300 car breaks down, and you put $4,000 into changing an engine on a $300 car. Doesn't make any sense, okay? And you're hoping, you try to get a different perspective. Well, if I put this new engine in there, this car, $100 car. And it doesn't matter if you got a brand new engine or a worn out engine. It's still a $300 car. Yes.
What if you put the big old fancy wheels about 24 and 40 years old?
I have actually seen people that do that, put those big wheels and all this other stuff, and they try to sell the car for, thousands more than what it's worth, and people will go, no, it's only worth this amount. But I got all these wheels, and I don't care. The car is only worth this amount. If I take all of this stuff off, the car is still only going to be worth that amount. So it doesn't matter what you put on it. When you start looking it up in Kelley Blue Book, it doesn't say, does it have 48-inch tires, or anything like that. It doesn't ask that.
When you go part that thing out, they give it some off, but then they'll have the parts all on that car is barely worth $300.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're just wasting your time.
You're just wasting your time. Okay? So once again, Balaam could only speak words that God put in his mouth. Okay? Now, Balaam either could not or he would not create his own message. All right? God would not allow him to create his own message, or he was not willing to create his own message. All right? And make that message and then claim it was from the Lord. There's a lot of people, you got to see a lot of people that will do that now. A lot of prophets that will do that now. And people will go along with it. I was at a camp meeting one time. I'm not going to tell you who it was, but this well-known preacher was there at this camp meeting, one of the prosperity preachers, and he came up and he walked by me, and I'm sitting there, in the congregation, the audience. He walks by me and he turns around and he points at me and he says, "The Lord told me piece of land that you've been looking at." And I looked at him like, "What?" He goes, "You're looking at some land." I said, "No, I'm not." Right there in front of everybody. I'm not gonna say, "Oh yes, thank you, brother," and then go, over. No, I'm not looking at any land. I'm not trying to get any land. I don't know what you're talking about. So don't tell me that was from God because God would know that I wasn't doing that. But Balaam either could or would not make up his own message and claim it was from the Lord simply to please King Balak. He wasn't going to do it. All right, verses 18 to 24. And he took up his parable, again, the prophecy again, and said, "Rise up, Balak, and hear. Hearken unto me, thou son of Zippor. God is not a man that he should lie, neither the son of man that he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good? Behold, I have received commandment to bless, and he hath blessed, and I cannot reverse it." He said, "Hey, I'm sorry. God already blessed him. There ain't nothing I can do about it. Can't take it back now." All right? He hath not beheld iniquity in Jacob, neither hath he seen perverseness in Israel. The Lord his God is with him, and the shout of the king is among them. God brought them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. So there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time it shall be said of Jacob and of Israel what God wrought. Behold, the people shall rise up as a great lion, and lift up himself as a young lion. He shall not lie down until he eat of the prey and drink the blood of the slain. So, yes. Yeah, we'll get to that. I knew that was going to be a question. So yeah, we're going to get to that in just a second. All right. Now, in this message, God rebukes Balak. Okay? And he teaches Balak about his divine nature of God. He says God's not a man. He can't be bribed. He's not impressed with riches. God doesn't lie. And he's not going to change his mind the way man does. Now, does God change his mind? The Bible says he does. Okay? But he doesn't change his mind the way man does. Okay? Yeah.
The devil tries to give you a word that ain't from God. He tries to make you think that word ain't true.
Mm-hmm.
When the Lord speaks a word over you or blesses you, there ain't nothing to stop it except yourself.
Yeah.
You're the one that can stop it. But if I'm the one that's giving, doing what God told me to do, and obey his gospel, there ain't nothing to stop it.
God always performs his word. If God has spoken it, he will perform it. If God said it, he's going to do it. Okay? God has all the strength, all the power to perform his promises. Okay? And it was not within Balaam's power to either bless or curse Israel. Okay? It wasn't Balaam that was blessing, and it wasn't Balaam that could curse Israel. All Balaam could do was report what God said. If God said Israel was blessed, Balaam had to say so. Okay? No matter what Balak gave him, he still had to say Israel was blessed. Okay? One reason that God declared Israel to be blessed was because in their present season, the season that they were in right then, at that particular time, they were not walking in obvious or significant iniquity or wickedness. In other words, at that particular time, they were not walking in sin like we have seen them done before. Okay? Therefore, God was with them. Okay? One important feature of the Mosaic covenant was its promise. God promised to bless a generally obedient Israel and curse a generally or significantly disobedient Israel. Right? Pretty easy. And when Balaam noted that God had not observed iniquity in Jacob nor seen wickedness in Israel, it was just a way to say, under God's covenant with them, they're going to be blessed. They're not walking in iniquity or significant sin. So, under their covenant with him, they're going to be blessed. Right? Now, this observation also pointed at a principle. Israel could be enticed into general or significant sin, then perhaps they would, under the covenant made with the Lord, bring a curse upon themselves. It was not someone else that was going to speak a curse on them. They would bring that curse upon themselves because they had been persuaded to turn to sin. Okay? Now, there's one little phrase there that is very significant. It's a shout of a king is among them. The shout of a king is among them. This is the first specific mention of Yahweh as king among his people in the Bible. This is the first time that's specifically mentioned. Okay? Now, we'll get to that part to where the strength of a unicorn. All right? The Hebrew word for unicorn here is ra'ameh. And what it means, it actually occurs in the New Testament. And we'll see it again very soon. But it occurs 9 times in the Old Testament. And the idea behind the Hebrew word is either one horn or a mighty horn. All right? Now, different commentators will tell you different things. Some commentators think this refers to a rhinoceros because a rhinoceros has one horn. All right? Others think that it refers to a wild ox or a strong goat of some sort. All right? Being a strong horn. Because it can either mean one horn or strong horn. So, either one, it could be either one. We don't know for sure. But, that's kind of what it is. That's when you see a unicorn, that's kind of what it means. It's either a wild ox or a strong goat or maybe even a rhinoceros. Right? Okay. Another phrase that was this is, there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. This was a strong and a direct way for God to say to Balak and Balaam, you can't curse Israel. Your sorcery does not have any effect on them. Okay? So instead of being defeated by sorcery or divination, Israel was like a lion that's going to devour its prey. So you can't do anything. All your sorcery and your magic and everything else is not going to work. Okay? All right, verses 25 and 26. And Balak said unto Balaam, neither curse them at all, nor bless them at all. But Balaam answered and said unto Balak, told not I thee, saying, all that the Lord speaketh, that I must do. So Balak, again, he's frustrated. He's aggravated by this. Essentially what he is saying is this: look, if you can't curse them, at least don't go around blessing them. That's basically what he's saying. You know, fine, if you can't curse them, all right, I get that, I understand, but don't bless them. What are you doing? Balaam is again presented as corrupt, but not a false messenger or a false prophet. Balaam's greed and corruption were not a good example, yet his commitment to faithfully report what God had said is an example that many modern Bible preachers and teachers should learn from. Okay? Balaam could not give a message just to please his audience and claim it's God's. Is basically what he was saying. Okay? All right, we're going to get into verses 24. Verse 24, or chapter 24. We've got, there's still, there's about 2 or 3 verses still left in chapter 23, but it goes right into chapter 24. So we're going to do that. Okay? So Numbers 23, 27 to 24:2. And Balak said unto Balaam, come, I pray thee, I will bring thee unto another place. Peradventure it will please God that thou mayest curse me them from thence. And Balak brought Balaam up to the top of Peor, and looked toward Jessamine. And Balaam said unto Balak, build me here 7 altars, and prepare me here 7 bullocks and 7 rams. 7 more of them. 7 more altars and 7 more bulls and rams. And Balak did as Balaam had said, and offered a bullock and a ram on every altar. And when Balaam said that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he went not as at other times to seek for enchantments, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in his tents according to their tribes, and the Spirit of God came upon him. So even after 2 unsuccessful attempts to cause Balaam to curse Israel, Balak is still willing to try again. Okay? This is,
He is very stubborn.
well, it's kind of like they say,
Or he's just very desperate.
he is very desperate. The definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting to get a different result. Okay? That's also the definition of desperation. This and his thought that this was just a matter of persuading a reluctant deity to get what he wanted. Balak thought that maybe another place, maybe if we move over to this place, we'll give him the results that he wanted. Okay? I didn't get it here the first time, so all right, let's move over here. No, still didn't get it. All right, well, let's move over here, and maybe it'll work. That's kind of like, it was a big thing back when we had the opioid. all these heavy-duty opioids and everything like that, people were they were doctor shopping. They were going to different doctors trying to get the doctor to tell them, yeah, I'll prescribe that for you. They would bounce around. And that's kind of what Balak was doing here. He goes, well, I didn't get the answer that I wanted here, so I'll go here. Well, I didn't get it here, so I'm going to go over here. He figures if he keeps moving from place to place, eventually he's going to get the answer he wants. Okay? And at the suggestion of Balaam, Balak offered another 7 bulls, another 7 rams. So now, okay, he had 21 rams, plus so this third time, they selected another place to make the prophecy again. If Balak had not yet learned that God was for Israel and not against them, Balaam seems to have at least learned that at this point. Balak may not understand it yet, but Balaam says, hey, you know, I got it through my thick skull. This ain't going to work. Okay? He had been convinced of the truth because he was finally convinced God wanted to bless Israel and not to curse them. So Balaam didn't use sorcery in this next prophecy. This means that the first 2 prophecies, Balaam followed the traditional custom of discerning the will of the gods through examining the entrails of the sacrificed animals. That's what they would do, is they would get kind of like reading tea leaves, stuff like that. Instead, they would read the animal guts. I know it's a really nice thing to say right after you've eaten, but that's what happened. Yeah. So now he stopped. He just gave up this false and artificial method that the pagans used, and he just listened to the voice of God. He said, I'm not going to go through all that mess again. I'm just going to listen to what God has to say. All right? Verses 3 to 9. And he took up his parable, again, prophecy, and said, Balaam the son of Beor has said, and the man whose eyes are open has said, he has said which heard the words of God, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance and having his eyes open. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, and thy tabernacles, O Israel. As the valleys are, they spread forth, as gardens by the riverside, as the trees of lime aloes which the Lord hath planted, and as cedar trees beside the waters. He shall pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. And his king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brought him forth out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a unicorn. He shall eat up the nations of his enemies, and he shall break their bones and pierce them through with arrows. He couched, he lay down as a great lion. Who shall stir him up? Blessed is he that blesseth thee, and cursed is he that curseth thee. All right? Now, this prophecy is a little bit different. Okay? This time, Balaam didn't receive the word in the circumstances of the pagan superstitions. Balaam spoke as a man that said whose eyes were opened. Light bulb went on. Light bulb moment. Bing! His eyes all of a sudden open up. So he's speaking as a man whose eyes were open and had seen the vision of the Almighty. So this beautiful, beautiful prophecy speaks of Israel's blessed abundance. It's their strength and their dominance over the neighboring nations. That God would give to Israel under God's blessing. Israel has an abundance of water here, stretching out over all the land. Under God's blessing, Israel has the strength of the unicorn. Remember, we talked about the unicorns. And the superiority of the lion. But most of all, this prophecy speaks of the abiding blessing of God on Israel and directly rebukes Balak for trying to curse Israel. He says, I will bless those that bless thee and curse those that curse thee. Verses 10 to 13. And Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam. Well, it's about time. And he smote his hands together. And Balak said unto Balaam, I called thee to curse mine enemies, and behold, thou hast altogether blessed them in these 3 times. In other words, look, I asked you to curse them, and 3 times now you've already blessed them. Therefore now flee thou thy place. I thought to promote thee unto great honor, but lo, the Lord hath kept thee back from honor. And Balaam said unto Balak, Spake I not also to thy messengers, which thou sendest unto me, saying, If Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the commandment of the Lord, to do either good or bad of mine own mind. But what the Lord saith, that will I speak. So that's pretty interesting there. So over the period of the first 3 prophecies, things had become worse for Balak, not any better. First, things just kind of steadily got worse. In the first, Balaam failed to curse Israel in the first one, right? In the second one, Balaam blesses Israel. And in the third one, Balaam cursed Balak and blessed Israel again. So things are just getting worse for him as he goes along. Okay? The money used to hire Balaam to build 21 altars, to sacrifice 21 bulls and 21 rams was not money that was well spent. Okay? He kind of just blew that money. And knowing this, Balak said he would not pay Balaam. Says, look, I ain't going to pay you. Okay? Now, there is a sense in which it was true that the Lord had kept Balaam back from the honor that Balak was trying to give to him. But what Balaam's corrupt heart most wanted was get that. This though, right? And tried to shift the direction and blame who? Blame God. Yeah. But he knew that he was not going to receive the reward that he hoped for because he failed to please his employer. All right? Verse number 14. And now, behold, I go unto my people. Come therefore, and I will advertise thee what this people shall do to thy people in the latter days. So it seemed as if Balaam was finished, but he had failed to curse Israel as Balak wanted. And now he was denied his reward from Balak. So Balaam was ready to head home. He says, well, I ain't getting paid. I might as well just go to the house. All right? But it compelled him to give Balak more than he wanted or even asked for. Balaam saved his best, or, from Balak's perspective, his worst, for last. All right. There was no preparation needed for this prophecy that he's about to get, or that he got. Since Balak was not trying to pay Balaam, Balaam would answer with a free prophecy. You're not going to pay me? Fine. I got something for you to hear. All right? One would show just how blessed and victorious Israel was going to be, both now and in latter days. All right. Verses 15 to 19. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam the son of Beor has said, and the man whose eyes are open has said, he has said, which heard the words of God and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. And Edom shall be a possession. Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion, and destroy him that remaineth in of the city. So the last 4 prophecies of Balaam are curses. The kind of prophecies wanted Balaam to deliver against Israel. Instead, these curses are spoken against Israel's enemy. So, speaking again by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, this an unlikely prophet of Yahweh described one glorious star, okay? With the authority to rule, had a scepter. Previously, Balaam prophesied of the beauty, strength, and blessedness of Israel. Now God uses him to speak of the culmination of all of Israel's beauty, strength, and blessedness, which is the Messiah, Jesus Christ.
I looked it up, Pastor. It's saying in here that people are trying to use that as an excuse that there are snakes in the Bible. And like you said, it shows unicorn and rhino, different ways, but they also said that it's a reference of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So the star with the scepter is the Messiah. It's Jesus Christ. Israel's ultimate blessedness comes from Jesus. And the Messiah is eventually going to rule over all nations. Now, here and in the following verses, the verses to come, God spoke about the neighboring nation of Israel and their future through Balaam. Balak must have been outraged to hear that his paid-for prophet, this is the prophet he paid for, he bought, to speak these words against Moab and not Israel. He paid for this prophet to speak a curse against Israel, and turns around and now he's speaking the curse against Moab. All right? Well, yeah, he didn't get paid after, they didn't pay him after that. Hey, and when he looked on Amalek, he stood up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perished forever. Balaam had then turned his attention to the Amalekites. Okay? Now, the Amalekites were a nomadic people. They were often hostile towards Israel. The people of Amalek were once very prestigious, but the star and the scepter is going to subdue them. All right, verse 21, 22. And he looked on the Kenites and took up his parable and said, Strong is thy dwelling place, and thou puttest thy nest in a rock. Nevertheless, the Kenite shall be wasted until Assur shall carry thee away captive. So, the Kenites, another nomadic tribe, it appears in Israel's history. The Kenites and their important city of Cain are going to be subdued under Israel. And Israel was going to be lifted above their neighbors. Verse 23 and 24. And he took up his parable and said, Alas, who shall live when God doeth this? And the ship shall come from the coast of Chittim and affect Asher and afflict Eber, and he also shall perish forever. So Balaam's 7th and final prophecy begins with a reminder that this strength of Israel and the subduing of their neighbors would be the work of God. All right? It wasn't for Israel's glory that this was going to happen. It was to God's glory. On the seventh prophecy, the specifics are a little cloudy about it, but the general direction is very Israel's ultimate triumph through the power of their star and scepter, their deliverer, Jesus. Some of the affliction promised against Israel's neighbor would come from afar, from the coast of Cyprus and presumably elsewhere. All right, verse number 25. And Balaam rose up and went and returned to his place, and Balak also went his way. So undoubtedly, they were both appointed. Balak was angry, okay? Even because Israel had not been weakened, each of them, because Israel had not been weakened spiritually, and therefore they were not made ready for defeat in battle. See, that's what Balak wanted, them to be weakened spiritually so he could defeat them in battle. Okay? Balak wanted Israel defeated. And Balaam just wanted Balak's money. That's all he wanted, okay? Either way, they both wanted Israel spiritually cursed. And God would not curse Israel. Now, Balak deserves credit for understanding where the strength of Israel was. He didn't seek to defeat Israel through military strategy. He knew it was a spiritual battle, and if Israel won the spiritual battle, they would most certainly win the military battle. Okay? We, as Christians, should walk in that same awareness. See, if we did, if we would give more time and attention to building our spiritual strength and having a close walk with Jesus, we would not allow Balak to be more perceptive about spiritual things than we are. Because basically, Balak was more perceptive about some spiritual things than Israel was. Because he knew where Israel's power came from. And it was spiritual power, not military power. All right? That brings us to the end of 24. Woohoo! So we finished 2 chapters tonight. All right? Any questions, comments, concerns, amens, oh me's, before we close tonight?
Thank you for joining us today. We pray you were blessed by the broadcast. If you have a prayer request or questions about Solid Rock Tabernacle, please visit our website at www.solidrocktabernacle.org. That's www.solidrocktabernacle.org. On behalf of the pastors and congregation here at Solid Rock Tabernacle, we pray you have a blessed week, and we invite you to join us in person or on one of our future broadcasts.